Uh, yeah, I was wondering about the Kaufman monoplane. I was wondering perhaps if he didn't fly it right there. That factory was about a half a block from where that old packing county airport used to be.
Sam Kaufman.
Right. But evidently, I also heard that he was taking them. That's where he was flying, and I've seen pictures of him.
I remember they just put legs up on it, back of an old Ford truck, and tie the fuselage on the back and drive over there and assemble it. That was the flying piece.
Of course, I know quite a bit about the Kaufman monoplane and how that business got started. But when Sam Kaufman sold, he sold to the Ranger Company, and it became the Kaufman Ranger. You know anything about these people from the Ranger Company?
I didn't know anything about it.
What was Sam Kaufman like?
Well, he just already had aviation things. He didn't have no experience in particular, except that he had some drawings of another airplane. Not, he did some modifications on it. The monoplane was one of the early day monoplanes, but all the others were biplanes and flying at that time. And made a monoplane out of it, but just didn't build very many of them.
Did you ever know Roy Hunt?
Oh, he was very
Whatever happened to him?
He got killed. He and his wife Lois. They were flying. Well, it's quite a story within itself. Best Crane Drilling Company had a Lockheed Lone Star. Roy Hunt was flying for him, and this old Bill Hightower, who's Miss Johnson, Frank Johnson, Frank, was in Washington, was ill, and so Bill Hightower, who was her son-in-law, called Les, who had the airplane in Phoenix, and said, we need to go to Washington and pick up Miss Johnson and send the airplane in. So Roy came, and his wife decided to go with him as co-pilot. And so they loaded up Bill Hightower and his daughter, and Roy and his wife. And the plan was to land at Louisville for fuel. Well, Roy was always running out of gas. He did it out there in the oilfield half the time. Put the airplane on guy wires with oil derricks and ran out of fuel and everything else. But anyway, he got to Louisville, it had picked up a little tailwind, so he thought he could make it on into Washington. He passed up Louisville, and he got as far as Elkins, West Virginia, ran out of gas, and he was trying to land there, and in the canyon, and he got in that canyon, ran out of gas, and piled it up and killed all of them.
Do you remember what year that was?
Huh?
Do you remember what year that was?
I don't know. I still have an old newspaper clipping of it someplace, but I can't tell you the year on it.
Of course, Roy Hunt won the Cord Cup and several other. So of course, Roy Hunt won the Cord Cup and several of those national races. He was quite a noted air racer.
And his brother Adam Hunt was also a pilot, but he had no reputation in the kind as Roy had in his early days. But anyway, I started to finish the story. Les Spain, who owned the airplane, sent Roy back to pick up these people. And he'd been drinking out there. And so when he set the airplane in, and when he heard that they went in out there and killed all of them, he took a bunch of sleeping pills on top of his whiskey, and he never woke up. He died.
How was that?
Coincidence. We should go at the same time.
Well, did you ever around Earl Halliburton when he was doing his aviation?
Safeway, I knew, only just I knew him, but that was all.
Do you know how he got interested in aviation?
Oh, I don't know.
he wasn't. Was he a pilot?
No.
I didn't think so. He just happened to be one of those oil men boosters of aviation, I guess.
No, he was, I don't know who interested in that. He got the idea of a Safeway thing, and it went well for a while. Like the rest of them got out of steam after a while.
Did you ever know Jack Russell? A fellow named Jack Russell. He was an early bird, and then he worked out at Tinker during World War II, and he was around Oklahoma and Montana. He had a...
Did he fly with it?
Yeah, around Okmulgee. He had a flying school there at one time.
Oh.
And he civilian pilot training program at Stillwater. I think he was an instructor there. But I haven't run across anybody that really knew him.
Well,
Red Mosher.
well, of course, Red was one of the early day ones. He was at Southfield too. After the war, and Red started a little airline from here to Colorado Springs. So he had a war passenger, I forgot what it was, not the only one around. And he's flying every day to Colorado Springs. I remember he took my mother-in-law up there. But she'd never been in an airplane. I had an awful time getting in it. But she went with Red anyway. And of course he became Vice President American.
Burt Woodring.
Huh?
Burt Woodring. Did you ever know him? From Enid.
Woodring?
Woodring.
Well, I knew, of course, that Woodring Field was named for him. I knew who he was, but that was all. I think he was a World War I pilot, I think.
Well, he was...
I don't know.
He and Lures Cornelius from Antlers, Oklahoma, were two of the Three Musketeers, the Army exhibition team.
Oh, I see.
And they were both killed in the early 30s. I just wonder if you knew either one of those.
Well, I remember the names of the field for him, but I didn't know why or what.
Duncan McIntyre from Tulsa.
Well, I knew him, of course.
Why don't you tell me about Duncan McIntyre?
Well, I can't tell you any more. I knew him because he was one of the early pilots over there. There were several around. Tulsa with Charlie Short, Tulsa Municipal, of course. He was one of the mainstays, and after that, I was really quite a long time.
Did you ever fly from McIntyre's?
Huh?
Did you ever fly from McIntyre's? Were you ever there?
No.
Oh, I was wondering if...
No.
Johnny Burke?
Oh,
of course, you knew Johnny Burke.
Johnny.
Yeah.
Quite well. He was one of the characters. Johnny never flew much himself. He was like Keith Cale. He did a lot of talking. I don't think Cale ever soloed him.
Well, he wrote me in his last letter that he did solo, but that was it. He
was here this recently. There was some Lev Edwards had a memorial here. He was one of the early day pilots.
Who was that?
Lev Edwards. He'd lived in Fort Worth and made a media, government media, but he died down there. They had the memorial service here. Keith came up for it. And several pilots there, of course, knowing Lev way back. They were arguing afterwards about Cale. But all the arguments I could get out of any of them, that they never knew him ever soloing. He talked too good.
Well, he said he did. And he talked in his last letter. I asked him about Burl Tibbs, and he told me that. How did he put it? He said everybody loved Burl Tibbs, and he was always borrowing money, which he never paid back, and he was, and we'd all have drinks together, and he never paid.
Well, we had to borrow. He was during the war. He had the Sam Rayburn's town. They had a school down there, and Tibbs was instructing down there.
Where was that at?
Huh?
Where was that at?
At the town where Sam Rayburn came from, Texas. Anyway, he'd come up here on the weekend, and unfortunately, a couple of times I was out at the airport ready to land, we were looking for a drink. Time to I made a mistake, but I used to have a little cabin down there on the lake. I invited him to come out. He stayed the whole weekend out there. Finally poured him in that airplane and taken him back to Texas Sunday evening so he could start working Monday.
Yeah.
So I knew for all were.
Yeah, he was quite a character. I've seen photographs of him. He seemed to be a very jovial type person.
Yeah.
And to me, tell me if I'm wrong, but from the little bits and pieces that I picked up, he seemed to always been starting these aviation companies, but he never could quite do it himself. Someone else would take it over and make it a successful operation.
No, he never was.
And he would move on to something else.
He'd end up flying for him, but he never was able to do it himself, organizing it. Nice guy though. I liked him, but he had that trouble with the bottle, and he always had it as long as he lived.
But everybody loved him. That's what I understand. He was around the very earliest. He was an early bird up there.
He was an early bird.
A friend of mine who just passed away, he was in his 50s. He got cancer and died. He was a corporate pilot down at Houston. A friend of mine and I drove down there a couple of months ago to help his mother move back up here. And I told him about Keith Kale. I had this letter. I picked it up as I was walking out the door, and I was reading this part about Burl Tipton. He said, "That's the guy that taught my dad to fly." So we got down there and looked at his log books, and sure enough, it was 1952 downtown Airport. Harry Weddington.
I know he was Hugo.
Hugo,
yeah.
Right. He was a balloonist early on.
Yeah, he was a Hugo.
Whatever happened to him? Last I hear from Clarence Page's book, in the 1930s, he was flying in reserves, but I don't know what happened to him.
I remember him, but I don't know either what happened to him.
Yeah. Rusty Bounds? Overton Bounds?
I know the name, but I didn't.
Yeah, he was an early bird, and he was killed at Clarence Page at a Cimarron during the war. Propeller. Hit by a propeller.
I knew of him.
Well, moving on. Did you ever take part in any of the Oklahoma air tours that were popular during the 20s?
Well, we did later, yeah. Through the air tours. In fact, through Walter Harrison, we were skipping Oklahoma those air tours. Later on.
When was the last air tour before the war?
Oh gosh, yeah, it was. We had. I remember I was flying a PT-19 the last time I took Walter Harrison on, and it rained. We were out Old Wally Post, Johnny Burke. We got on the wing of the airplane, waiting for the rain to stop so we could start on the air tour. I sat around in a couple hours waiting for the weather to clear up. None of us had any estimates, of course. As far as estimates are concerned nowadays. And so we just had to wait. We had to get our weather. Walter Harrison was the skipper of the Oklahoma Times and Times.
Getting on toward World War II, and this is one of the topics that's a favorite of mine. As a matter of fact, I want to write a little article about it, and that's the Civil Air Patrol in Oklahoma during World War II. And you were the executive officer at one time, and squadron commander, and then held several other positions, as I recall, from picking up on some of that. You want to tell me your interpretation of how the CAP got started in Oklahoma during World War II?
Right after Pearl Harbor. In fact, it was almost immediately after Pearl Harbor. Whose idea it was originally, I never heard of it. Jimmy Doolittle, and we call Moss Patterson. And we were very close friends. Told Moss Moss that they were going to start this Civil Air Patrol nationally. They wanted Moss to get started here, and he was wing commander. I mean, so I think Moss called me, I think about the first one, and asked me to come with him and get some others, come with us too, Bonnie Davis and Hector, three women, and Mary Frances and so anyway, Moss called me, and then we decided we were going to have an adjutant. I was going to be his executive officer. So Cale was selected to be the adjutant, which he was during the whole time. And then we, of course, recruited Johnny Pascal, a whole bunch of people who Bonnie, his husband, and I don't know, and this went from there, and then we went from different towns and got to whoever there was interested in aviation or that somebody who was flying, and then let them promote some others, and they were patriotic enough. It went very well for us, and we got pretty well organized statewide, but it was Moss's deal and Jimmy Doolittle's urging.
Were you in on that meeting? With Doolittle?
I wasn't in on the meeting with Moss, because he came and stayed with Moss a couple of days, and Moss called me after he left.
What, was Doolittle going around the country doing this?
Yeah,
Was Doolittle going around the country?
No, he just happened to be coming here, and he and Moss had been parties and so on, long time friends, and so he just stopped off, talked to Moss, told him what they had in mind, and I think wasn't necessarily trying to sell it, but he did.
So, where was the first headquarters?
I guess the old Knuckles Airport. Not the first one I remember.
Is that right? Now, Knuckles Airport, was that not out near where Will Rogers is?
No, it was off of Mab, about southwest, 54, 56, something, right off of Mab. And then the one you're talking about was Country Club, which was on Old Highway 77, not close to Will Rogers.
Right.
That was it. And that was Bill Garhoffman's airport.
Yeah, Don Farrell, I think, told me that.
He was one of the cadets.
He was a cadet, right. I ran across his name in some of the old records, and I asked him one time.
I told him, we were laughing about it the other day, I said, I had Johnny, Johnny was a cadet, but I had him, and he ended up National Commander, Brigadier General, and you are a Major General already.
Two generals, yeah.
The Don Farrell.
Yeah, cadets. So, do you know what the total number in the Civil Air Patrol, its height was?
What?
How many was in the Civil Air Patrol from Oklahoma during its height?
How many?
Yeah, just a rough idea.
We had a squadron in every town almost.
Yeah.
Squadrons consisted of 30, 40 people, depending on if you get men and women.
Can you tell me anything about Bill Shockey?
Well, Bill, I worked with Bill. He was one of my adjutants. Worked with Bill all the time. Matter of fact, Bill and I had a job recruiting air wax later on in the war.
Right. He was in charge of the air crewman recruitment through the Civil Air Patrol, recruiting potential air crewmen for the Army through the Civil Air Patrol.
We did that. That was a wax deal, I think. That's the only one that Bill, he and I both worked on.
Well, this one they would. I've got some of the Civil Air Patrol files. I went through them, and they would go to schools. I think you had to be between 16 and would be 17 or 18 soon, or something like that. And they would actually arrange for them to have physicals and give them an orientation and kind of weed them out before they got to the.
Yeah, when I was Bill, I three guys, we had three steermen belonging to the government, and we'd have a, make a, get somebody in town, more than one of them doing very well, and Johnny Pasco and somebody else, we all three wanted to steer with her. We would go into these towns, and it's time before the Air Force recruiters would set up, find a field, and they'd set up a platform truck where we could operate off this platform truck, and they'd get a crowd out around. We'd come in, and the prospects of the women, qualified age-wise and so on, we would give them rides. And that was our part of it. Then we would pick up and leave, and the Air Force recruiters then would go ahead and this paperwork and so on. But Chucky rode with me. Might have been not in that airplane, but I got some pictures of him in the little teletype liaison planes. And we were out, and a couple of blacks hanging in talking to us.
Yeah, the aircraft you got early in the war. I know later in the war, the government turned over some surplus aircraft to the Civil Air Patrol, but where did these aircraft come from in the beginning?
Oh, the first one we had was Taylor-Craft liaison. And I see I had about 6 of them, and I gave 2 of them to Tulsa because they had the biggest group over there. And then Dewey Moffett Blackwell got one to that area up there, and let this doctor at Durant had one down there, and then we kept 3 or 4 of them here, and they came to Tinker, and we picked them up at Tinker. And in '43, I guess it was. That's when we got the steering. The surplus, they just weren't using it for primary training anymore, so we got some.
Do you recall any, of course they did the recruiting and a lot of the training of cadets and things like that, but of course one of the main missions of the Civil Air Patrol was search and rescue. And I've run across accounts, but nothing specific about, they did some disaster relief during the war, and they did I'm sure they did some search and rescue. Do you recall any of that?
Of course, I was on that too, but we had, I don't know, any number of those kids that went on to become, they became interested in aviation and went on later on to went to Naval Academy or to Air Force Academy. And some of them made a god name for themselves. Of course, we were getting close to the end of the war then, but they were stimulated through the Civil Air Patrol to continue.
Do you recall anybody in particular? Any names?
Oh, I don't know offhand. No. We kept track of them at that time, of course.
Of course, you got 2 outstanding cadets too that wound up, like you say, Johnny Boyd and Don
like
Farrell.
Johnny Boyd and Don Farrell, pretty sharp voice.
I ran across some photographs of a cadet encampment out at Will Rogers and the old barracks out there and that type of thing. Can you tell me a little bit about summer encampments for cadets during World War II?
We bring them in, and of course we just it's a military organization. We had a lot of foot drills. We had a lot of studying airplanes. One thing we did was those days we had a lot of these airplane spotters, looking for foreign planes come in, and the spotters who, by the silhouettes, you could put them on the top of airplanes. And we also made the cadets learn to identify those airplanes too. We had books and everything else as to size and whether they were trying to fly away or single way or what they were. And they spent time on that. And then of course we gave them all some flying. During the period that we didn't so long, we'd give them 3 or 4 hours to put it in the canvas.
So, I ran across a photograph of the Halliburton air fleet back during the war, and it's a line, it's a photograph, and there's the CAP emblem on just about all of it. Do you know of any Halliburton or any of these companies involved? What did they do? Donate or volunteer their aircraft, or?
I don't think they did anything other than show interest in it to that extent. Probably trying out a logo, but they helped us a little with money too. You know, matter of fact, a little later on, we went to the legislature and got some money, but that was a long time later. And had we had it when we wanted during the war, we could have used it, but we didn't get it till after the war, really. Didn't need it then because they weren't. It was phased out pretty fast. People had been, unless they've been in a long time like I had, just lost interest in it because the war was over. That was the purpose of joining originally, to try to do something for the war effort.
Yeah, that brings up a point. At the end of the war, there was some question on whether the Civil Air Patrol should be disbanded or not. And I believe Bill Shockey went to Washington, and I believe they National Commanders Conference. And
well, of course, we had, if you remember, we had the National Commander at the beginning, which was Colonel Johnson from Cleveland, and regular Army, real fine fellow. He did all the footwork for us in Washington as necessary. The Air Force and Sheriff of Civil Air Patrol would be in the so-called auxiliary Civil Air Patrol that started interfering with their business, you know. And we did a lot of search and rescue for them. We did courier out of Tinker to the 2nd Air Force, Colorado Springs, and then we also had that submarine control group on the go. And, so that's good, and but the Air Force thought they could do it better than Civil Air Patrol.
You've mentioned several things that I was going to ask you about. One of them being the courier service. Were you ever involved in that?
Yeah.
And can you describe one of the flights, perhaps?
Well, from the supply depot, well, Tinker, we had at that time we had some closed Wacos, 3 of them. They were privately owned, but they were couriering and paid mileage and so forth. And Sherry things that the 2nd Air Force were badly in need of emergency things for airplanes, parts and so forth. And those people threw, Jeff Gibbert was one of them. They threw those walkers out there, bad weather and everything else. They just load it up a Tinker and take off to Colorado Springs.
That was the regular route.
Yeah, that was it.
I've heard of the industrial courier service. The industrial courier service, where they flew vital.
Well, I feel some office stuff, and especially cities where they had tornadoes and so on. They always hold medical supplies. So
Right. What tornado was it? Okmulgee? There was a big tornado in.
Okmulgee.
And then they flew serum once. Didn't they have to fly serum to Ardmore, something like that?
We got Charlie Rose tornadoes, I remember they had a tornado up at the northeast part of the state. They needed medical supplies, and I remember the weather was foul. I would have gotten out in an automobile on it. But anyway, they loaded Charlie up down at the Country Club Airport, all these medical supplies, took off. Well, up there is that memory town, like up north of Claremore.
Bonita? I believe it was Bonita.
Yes, it was Bonita, north of Claremore something. They served a purpose in that respect.
So there were some flights going on to the oil fields, or carrying some parts to the oil field, you say?
Well, I mean, get some contractor that needed a part and broken down and needed it bad and couldn't, of course, those days didn't have mail service.
Did you ever make one of those flights?
No,
of course, you were in the
higher.
higher. Yeah, you were. Yeah, right.
And we did a lot of search and rescue between, had a lot of airplane beaches and Cessnas, especially from Wichita to Memphis. That was our run. And we set up any number of times at McAllister's and base work out of there and work through Aviation Mountains down there.
Do you recall any specific instance about search and rescue? Do you recall any specific instance of search and rescue, say a find or?
Oh yeah, we had a pretty good system worked out. We had people had worked up some charts, maps for us, and they grid those maps for us, and we'd give a grid of the map, and this would be his area to fly. He'd fly a section line, he'd go up the section line here, come back a half section, over, back up, fly out that grid. Depending on what his fuel capacity was. Remember, I had one fellow had two things. He had single ignition aerometer. And at McAllister, he was over there in the Aviation Mountains. I knew he was long past due for his fuel, so it was getting dark, and I kept watching over the hills for him. And we were going to have to look for him. And pretty soon he came driving in, and I said, what the heck have you got there? We've been worried to death about it. Well, I was over there by Heaven or someplace. Said I was getting low on gas, and I saw a place to land there by a filling station on the highway. I went over and got a can of gas and flying. And I talked to him about that single ignition thing. I said, well, that mag twist. He said, well, I can. Just one less to worry about. That was his attitude.
Yeah, if it's not on an airplane, it can't break. You know, that's. So, do you remember any of the people that flew coastal patrol from Oklahoma?
Well, the main thing, my good friend Bill Green in Tulsa headed that coastal patrol, and he had. Well, I know, I had to tell you about my old Stetson. I hung depth bombs on an old Stetson on the wing, and guys flew it, and the government took it away from me later on for a CPA program. I got bought back from after the war.
Oh, you say you had one?
Huh?
You had a Stetson?
Yeah.
That was used in the coastal patrol?
Yeah, and so I let him take it to the Gulf, but then when I came back, they had the WTO War Training Service program going for pilots, and they took it away from me.
Well, tell me more about this Green in Tulsa.
Oh, Bill Green.
And his involvement with the coastal patrol.
That was his assignment. It was the submarine patrol off of Corpus, and he recruited people from Tulsa and some of our groups. Mm-hmm. And they went down there rigged up those little airplanes on those depth bombs. They go out patrol.
So that was an Oklahoman that was involved in running one of the bases then?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I know there was a Tulsan who was killed on coastal patrol. What was his name?
Bill Green was the main one in Oklahoma that headed the deal. And he flew it himself. He was down there. He flew it himself.
Is he still alive?
No.
I'd like to find somebody that flew coastal patrol from Oklahoma.
And Gerald Westby was one of them. Also,
Westby,
he's
yeah,
dead.
he's dead. I tried to get a hold of him. I talked to his widow.
He's dead. Trying to think who else was on that group.
I think a lot of them flew out of Panama City.
Yeah, they were down there. Our group were all around Corpus. That area, Rockport.
Well, I guess you've read what Neprud's book about the Civil Air Patrol. Neprud, the book about the Civil Air Patrol, came out soon after the war, and talks about the Oklahoma pilots down on Coastal Patrol who always playing on the jukebox, "Take Me Back to Tulsa." I remember that from the talking about that. Yeah, I'd like to find somebody from the Coastal Patrol, but I haven't had any luck so far.
No, I don't know. So, of course, I know that group in Tulsa. Some of the old timers over there, but they weren't ones who, they're the ones I knew over there, the old timers were corporate pilots flying for log companies and so on, so they some of them belonged to Civil Air Patrol, but just help out on weekends or something, but none of them went to the coast.
One more question about the Civil Air Patrol. Did you have any saves or finds? I mean, did you locate some of these downed aircraft during World War II?
Oh, yeah.
Here in Oklahoma? Do you remember any specific instances?
Well, in the Congress, I don't remember here locally, come up to from the headquarters we set up in McAllister. That's where those guys get lost and go in down there. Ferry airplanes from the beach in Cessna and so on to Navy base or something in Memphis or whatever. And we had a system on looking for them and would locate one, and then the ground people would go in and rescue them unless the fire, look for fire, burn out spots on shiny things, because when the airplanes weren't painted as this, shiny airplanes, or where trees had been knocked off, run through the trees and you always take a close look at those. But, we picked up several of them over a period of time. On that run down there, we had people, we had 6 or 7 of them. People doing their own airplanes down there, doing search and rescue. We never did use any military airplanes on that. Private, you know.
Can you assign a number to how many you might have found? How many crashes?
Well, I know I could think of 3 or 4 in particular. I remember that I don't think we ever had any survivors from them, but I know they found the airplane.
So you'd be assigned this by the Army Air Force?
Because you have to they get the Army jeeps and so on, because a lot of them were rough, sometimes they rough terrain, and be very difficult a lot of times to get to them. So, we weren't equipped to do that, so get the military to do that.
Well, following the war, you started flying for Mike Monroney. What year did you start flying for Mike Monroney, and how did that all take place?
Well, of course, I'd known Mike. We went to school together, so I know him all his life. And his wife and my wife were born and raised and blocked from each other. They were friends. It was just one of those natural things we'd be together. So when he ran for Congress, of course, I managed his first campaign. And in '49, well, I'd gotten married back. My wife wasn't very fond of airplanes, so it was about till I didn't fly any at all hardly that she knew about till about 36, I guess it was. Harold Bender had a Feely dealership out at the old Wally Post out of Johnny Forks. I started to go out and fly with him. We'll got flying again. 11:49. Mike decided he wanted to run for Senate. And just before, when he was in the House, he only had 5 counties, start up in Stillwater, go down to Garvin County, down to Paul Valley, and come home and through. He didn't need an airplane. But when he ran for Senate, he'd been a Pi Gam, and so he decided that he'd call every Pi Gam he knew that lived in a town where they had an airport. And I had to fly an AT-6. I'd bought surplus. And so we made the whole state 49. He'd call his Pi Gam meet us at the airport. He'd talk to them and say, "Who's Elder Thomas's campaign manager?" And what did you used to get? Well, old Joe Dokes was, but he died or he moved or something. So anyway, we came back after the trip around the state of 2 days, and he called his wife and said, "I'm going to run for Senate." She wasn't very pleased with that because in the House, you just drive up and down 5 counties. No problem. This is a big state. So anyway, I started flying in 49 when he ran for the Senate, was elected. And went on. Then I went to work for him as executive assistant on aviation affairs because he became chairman of the aviation subcommittee of the Senate, which is a big job. And Beach and Cessna and Lockheed, all those people, every rollout of every new airplane, they could be invited, being chairman of the committee, and so he couldn't go, so I would go as his representative, so I did a lot of travel for him, even in Europe too. And so I stayed with him until 69, of course.
How did Mike Maroney come by his interest in aviation? Was it
he had been, when he was on the old Oklahoma News, he'd been the aviation editor as Greeby, Sam Greeby and Graham. Well, Chibi Graham was bought some airplanes and go up, carry him back. Mike would go with him, ride back there. He just became interested in it. He was the so-called editor, aviation editor for the old Oklahoma News.
Oh.
And that's really how
You mentioned somebody else that I've heard about, Sam Greeby.
Yeah.
Didn't he run a flying school out of Chickasha?
He
Tell me a little bit about him, whatever you may know.
Well, I knew Sam after he was flying. I don't know who taught him to fly, but I knew him. He's just one of the drinking boys that come up to parties and so forth. I never did. And his family, the Greeby family, is an old family in Chickasha. He just kind of threw nothing type of guy, just played around, had an airplane. That's all. I knew him well enough.
Yeah. Well, I didn't realize you were an advisor to Mike Maroney. Well, I suspect you might have been an informal advisor, but I didn't know you were an executive assistant to Mike Maroney.
Well, I was.
So you must have had something to do with influencing Mike Maroney with the 1958 Air Commerce Act.
Well, I got a lot of credit for advising him on a lot of things on that, and then when we wanted FAA to become an independent agency, got out of Commerce, which everybody in Commerce were railroad engineers and didn't care anything about aviation. So we got them as an independent agency, and he was responsible for that. And then when he was responsible for the air traffic controllers to get special compensation for the high density areas, shorter hours and shorter long retirement, and all those things were recommended by That's how I've sort of been going around these places, going in towers and under estimate conditions and so on.
This was you?
And so I got credit for advising on a lot more things than he listened to.
Well, this is your time not to be modest. This isn't the time to be modest.
No,
I'd like to know what you contributed to that,
well,
that act.
Those things that came about, because we were talking in Boston, had you been around when the pilot strike came on, and it wouldn't have happened if the town was and then after we became an independent agency, after I did the Department of Transportation, and then took them back, took FAA back into the Department of Transportation, which was a very bad thing to do. And I'm just now going back to an independent agency after all these years.
Well, what were some of the hurdles that had to be overcome? Politically,
well,
economically,
the
whatever.
regulation of the airlines was a big thing, because he, in his position as chairman of the committee, he had also had say-so on the airlines as well as everything else. And so they had a big fight on deregulation when it was on deregulation, and put the CAB went out of business. I want to guess that I thought it would be a bad thing to deregulate, because they're just going to go crazy and go wild, and they did. And most of the drugstore cowboys who got in the aviation business were broke. And what anything to do about it. And it's been pretty well weeded out now. And now if they go back, I think if the agency goes back now to an independent agency, the morale of agencies is the lowest I've ever seen it. I contact those people all the time. And, I think FAA has to get back on the track and be worth something as it is now. And of course the surplus money has got the user taxes built up, you know, $6-7 million right now, and they're using some of it for administrative for FAA, but they need to do it, get some to modernize equipment and so on, but they don't want to turn that money loose, because that will show government deficit that much, you see, and they don't turn that much money loose, and it shows that makes the government look bad. Keep hanging on to it and keep building up.
Who were some of the politicians that might have been against the 58 bill, the 1958 bill?
I remember Don Clausen in California. I remember a lot of us for it. Randolph, Clausen, he was Congress in California 20 years. He was big help. He was head of transportation department of the House at that time, so he worked sort of together on the thing. And we didn't have much opposition, really. There were some, of course, members of the Commerce Committee didn't want to see it, because they didn't want to lose aviation. But they come and go, so it didn't make much difference.
So it really had pretty easy sailing through Congress.
Yeah, once they get the bill, get them out of Commerce.
Since we're talking about the FAA, I'd like to find out what you know about Benny Griffin and his role in bringing the FAA Aeronautical Center to Oklahoma City.
Benny was at Houston with FAA. It was in the Aeronautical Center, such as it wasn't much. And through Mike and others, we decided to move it here. And so Benny came here when they moved it up here, and started here. We just had a couple old Quonset huts out there, where we were now, supplied depot with a Quonset hut. And then the city trust agreed to build those buildings, and it just went from there. And of course, I talked to McClure, who's the administrator out there now. I talked to him last Friday, and they're getting ready to build another big complex out there. It's just getting bigger and bigger all the time. So we don't have that from now on because there's too much money been spent out there. We've never think about going anyplace else.
Well, I remember reading a newspaper article. It was before Benny Griffin died. And,
well, Benny, when he came here, he stayed here at the center for a while, and then he went to Washington, and he was manager of Washington National for a while. And but he was still with FAA when he died. But I remember I used to see him when he'd go up there. And one incident, South America. Anyway, he bought a Circus 351. He was flying around up and down the Tolman, and he ran into Capital Airlines, put it in the river up there. And so Johnny Burke and George Hathaway was up there. And so they went out and borrowed a couple of backpack parachutes from Benny Griffin. And then they went down to American Gate to get on, they had these parachutes strapped up and talking loud, so we don't let these damn South Americans get run over and kill us. It's empty, that gate. That was one of the big jokes around Washington. Of course, Burke and George Hathaway, no one else would have thought of it.
Well, this newspaper article, Benny Griffin tells how he, quote, stole the FAA and brought it to Oklahoma City. In other words, he really didn't have final approval. He just packed it up and brought it up here. Yeah. I mean, in essence, that's what he was saying. Yeah, and he referred to it as stealing the FAA.
He bought Murph Shedenhall and about 3 or 4 others I can remember came with him and just set up shop here. And Griff got credit for getting it up here.
Yeah. And then just sat around waiting for the approval.
The approval wasn't home.
Yeah. You must have rubbed shoulders with Stanley Draper.
Oh, yes.
Can you would you like to tell me a little bit about him and his interest in aviation and promotion of it?
First thing I can tell you about Stanley, he did more for this town than any and all of them they've had before or since then. Because he was one of those people that only one, or call up Mr. Gaylord, C.R. Anthony, Babe Eddie, say, come down here at the office, we've got to have a talk here at 10 o'clock or something. And anybody else trying to go to hell, but they'd be there. He's that kind of guy, but he made this town move. And of course he was a big help at the center out there too. I don't mean to discount him any there because he did have to get a lot of money out of Washington for it. He was a duo. I guess they'll never have anybody else. Stanley Jr., he doesn't have any to get up and go that his father had. Paul Strathmore didn't have. So Stanley was roughshod, and he was mean in a lot of cases. I mean, he'd do things that I didn't do well. I thought it was wrong, but he got things done. So you can't knock it. He helped this city.
Well, you might be able to shed some light on this one. I was listening to another tape like this one, made by Dorothy Pressler Morgan, and she was talking about her tenure out there at Will Rogers as the airport manager, and she talked about the time in 1942 when Braniff moved to Dallas, and she said, and that's all she said was, and Stanley Draper almost lost his job over that one. Can you shed any light on that? What that meant? What he was?
I didn't think he did that, but I know that the powers that be, when Paul Braniff was talking and Tom Braniff, of course, was one of the wheels around town then too, and so he was talking, Paul was talking about going to Dallas because he had a place to go down there, and he's kind of working out in the field here. And he could get a hangar down there and get a lot of help if he wasn't getting here. And so they blamed Stanley for not offering him a lot. Stanley didn't feel like he was justified in having it. So we moved. And
That's Tom Brand.
Tom Brown.
Paul stayed here, right?
Yeah.
What happened to Paul? I mean, I have heard from probably about 4 sources that he was like Burl Tibbs and he was a pretty heavy drinker. And
Well, he started that deal with Tulsa. Ted Colbert was one of his pilots. Paul and Ted Colbert. And they all were conductors. That was their main occupation when they went flying. Sometime when they're flying. But Tom, this time, of course, Braniff was going pretty good, and they went to Dallas and just went from there and went to Tom got killed. Chuck Beard was president by that time, and so it made no Tom leaving that really didn't change the picture. He just went right on.
but Paul stayed here in Oklahoma City. Did he continued flying, I assume?
Yeah, he had a old Lockheed Vega that he's flying around. It's pretty much just fun. Yeah.
Was he still? What did he do for a living then?
I don't know. I never did anything.
I was talking to another fellow I ran into, and he said when they moved down there, one of the things that Tom and Paul had a falling out.
Yeah. Well, Tom was all business, and Paul wasn't.
Yeah.
So and then when Tom got killed, it was shocked, of course, the Braniff organization, but fortunately Chuck Beard had been there long enough that they were able to continue it on and go on to better things. But Paul, actually, as far as the Braniff company per se, after it got going, he had nothing to do with it going.
Fred Jones he was a director, was he not?
He was the director of Braniff. So, and had a lot of money in it. He and Tom were friends. As a matter of fact, Fred was the one that found Chuck Beard and brought him and was president of the family.
By the way, did you know that Mrs. Paul Braniff passed away here in August? Mrs. Paul Braniff, last August, she passed away.
Yeah.
And I was wondering what happened to him, Paul.
I don't remember.
Did he ever fly professionally?
I should have. No,
Not after.
he's flying around here, but I just never did know him. I can't remember when.
I think he died in '67 or something like that. But after maybe he had stock in the company and did retire.
It might be. I just don't know.
But he never went to Dallas with the rest of them. I was wondering why.
And the guys that were with Braniff at that time, like Ted Colbert, and those people were, they're all gone now.
Do you know Claude Seaton? Claude Seaton?
Well, of course, Claude, he stayed with Braniff for years after he got down there and was managerial. Well, he piled up one airplane here, Will Rogers, in the early days, an old DC-3, I remember very well.
I got a letter from him a while back.
Oh, did you?
I think he lives in Midland, Fort Worth, somewhere down that north central.
Yeah.
And
He lived in Fort Worth for years. But I remember in real bad weather, that first accident we had on municipal, came in one night, old DC-3 from Kansas City or someplace, and pilot DC-3 up in the middle of the airport out there. Got bagged up himself pretty good, but then he went on to Fort Worth, Dallas, and became their manager of maintenance down there. Ran the shops there for a long time after that. didn't fly anymore.
Oh, well, speaking of Stanley Draper, that brings up another subject, and that is the National Aviation Clinics. And I guess he was instrumental in getting those going.
I've got a certificate out there. I was an observer. I mean, advisors on the committee.
That was
43 and 44.
That's right, you were. That's right.
Yeah.
That was really something. The who's who of aviation showed up in Oklahoma City.
I've got friends, of course, that I've been head of the pilots organization, Clark Bergen, for 39 years, and I hear from these guys all over. Matter of fact, there's an old guy who was captain of TWA, Pan Am, I mean, represented Pan Am at the 43, 44 National Aviation Clinics, and he and I, after years later, he and I became fast friends. He's retired now, of course, from Pan Am a long time, but he lived in Florida. But I got a certificate out of it as appointing a consultant to the National Aviation Clinic.
Whose idea was the National Aviation Clinic?
Well, I think Stanley was given credit for part of it, but there was from Mike, of course, from Washington too. They had some people there wanted to have it. I mean, Oklahoma City, what they had it out the legislature. Matter of fact, they met out the legislature. Headquarters with this old storeroom. And then they would go bust them out to the legislature's not session. They used the legislative hall up there.
Those were held in Oklahoma City, what, starting in 43?
43 and 44.
44 and 45?
No.
43 and 44. Seems like it's 45, too. I've got some of the proceedings.
Well, you know better than I, but I know I was involved in 43 and 44.
Oh, I see.
It well could have been. I was probably off the Texas slope in 45.
I was absolutely astonished at the names, at the people who showed up.
Oh, Lord.
Doolittle, my God, Aker.
All of them. And every manufacturer had.
Oh yeah, Bill Piper.
Bill Piper and
Walter.
I mean the old man Douglas himself came.
Sure.
And just one after another.
Of course.
Ms. Beach was here, and Clyde Cessna, or one of the Cessnas. I don't know if it was Clyde or not. But you know, aviation was here.
It's just a who's who. I mean, the pioneers.
It was the beginning of really commercial aviation after the war.
Right. Want to ask you something. You touched on it a couple of times during this whole interview, but I've got a little file in my research, and every time I run across a clipping or something like that, I stash it, and that's bootlegging. Bootlegging.
Okay.
Bootlegging and aviation.
Well,
and, you just go ahead and tell me about. I'll tell you, Burl Tibbs. I ran across a newspaper clipping. Roy Stewart wrote an article about Burl Tibbs flying in whiskey to one of the oil fields, and the oil men would go out there and they shut down the highway while he landed.
Well, one thing, Henry Grader of Atoka was accepted as being the finest foreign whiskey in Oklahoma. And so, how I happened, because and Bob Tarbutton I don't think he had 10 hours when he decided to start hauling whiskey up to Atoka. And so that's how I knew about the business. And then 2 or 3 others out there wanted to make a little money. They'd go down and get a load, you know. Come back loaded with fruit jars and gallon jugs and everything else. Open cockpits, you know. You just stick it around wherever you could. And, but that was, of course, that was the rough part of it. Then later on, it became more refined, and we had a lot of whiskey those days. Had prohibition here, but they all. I remember one time this kind of colored guy flying, calling Captain Davis, flying an old Nordine for St. Chambers, and he got over Shreveport, was lost, and they had to call all the airlines, everybody away, get away till they found this guy and could get him down. Well, they practically hung Captain Davis. Now he'd come down and get a load of whiskey. So then, but anyway, Slim sent him some money. He got out of that and came back. About the second or third trip after that, I came by Wally Post Airport one morning, and this old Nordine was right off the Cross Britain Road there in a bar ditch and sticking up on its nose in this bar ditch, tail of it up in the air. Old Slim Chambers was sitting out on the back with his hands in his head. I went by and said, "What happened, Slim?" He said, "Oh, the so-and-so ran out of runway and ideas all the same time." Broke whiskey all over the place.
Yeah, that's always been a fascinating and humorous aspect of Oklahoma aviation that I've never seen anybody really touch on, you know. It's,
but he hauled a lot of it too. But and I'm sure there were others, but I didn't.
Did you ever do any yourself? Or are you gonna do it?
I came from Wichita Falls one day. I had the 1860. I had 6 cases of whiskey in the back of it, stacked up in the seat, and I tied the strap down. And I got close to Oklahoma City. I saw this black cloud up there, you know, just a solid cloud. And I called the tower. I said, "What's up to the north of me there? It looks like a cloud of some kind." I said, we had nothing I know of. I said, "We better take a look up there." She said, "Well, it's a dust storm moving there." Well, anyway, here I was with this 6. It was a very easy airplane to ground. We had an air gear on it. We had to stay on it all the time. Not really. Now this is the time. Wind was 64 miles an hour. This dust storm was, and you know, gusty and everything else. And I thought, this would be a great time for me to ground loop this right out in the middle of Will Rogers Field with 6 cases of whiskey. But I didn't, fortunately. But I thought that time, well, I was very careful because I didn't want to get caught with that whiskey. It got a little hard to convince him I was buying it, you know.
Well, I imagine it was pretty easy not to get caught, or pretty difficult to get caught flying it in. I imagine the law enforcement was concentrating on the...
Nobody cared.
Yeah.
You know, that's somebody that's really goofed up
right.
On the airport or something. Police they weren't looking for anybody hauling whiskey.
Back to Mike Monroney for a minute. Now you worked for him from what? You said 1949?
No, I flew it for him for 49 to 69, but actually I was his executive assistant 16 years, 53 to 68.
I see. And N277 Mike, that was Mike Monroney's aircraft, and I believe you got a picture on the wall. That was a Comanche.
Huh?
That was a Comanche.
Yeah, I have a picture of it. I'll show it.
Right, I saw that. Yeah. And where did you usually fly him when he was in?
Well, I flew it to Washington up the south, but he never did go work. But I just on his schedule here, so I'd make a schedule here where it's just killing schedule. Figure on flying every day, and you get up somewhere and fog in, you know, have to drive part of it, and go from Altus in the morning to Okmulgee in the afternoon. And, so I flew, made the schedule and flew in the whole time.
What airport were you based out of?
Will Rogers.
Will Rogers.
I mean, the Lloyd Catlin.
Catlin, yeah, that's where I learned to fly there at Catlin. I remember we called him Old Man Catlin.
Yeah, Lloyd kept it for me all. Well, we lived in that airplane for 10 years.
10 years.
I flew it one time. Well, we flew it when the session was out, starting in August, late August, September, and through up till after Christmas, you know. Especially after the Senate, you had to cover this whole damn state with Boise City to Idaville, you know, back and forth. And it's had a lot of weather too. He didn't like weather, so I tried to stay out as much of it as I could, but something get caught once in a while.
Can you remember a particularly tight spot?
Huh?
Can you remember a particularly tight spot?
No, not with him. I piled the airplane up without him, but not really.
How did that happen?
Oh, I was flying in March of Dimes. I mean, yeah. Anyway, one of those charity deals, charging people by the pound to haul them out from one coast. And I came around to land on 3-1. And a guy in an Aero Commander cut in front of me. I said, well, you go around or you can take 3-5. So I came around and I'd kind of been way off over the paragraph and drifted along. And apparently the damn thing iced up because this I got over about the Aero Commander building. I poured the coal on to get down there and nothing happened, just quit. Where I was over the building, but I was facing up 8-foot high wire fence on the end of the wild post. Couldn't turn down the road. So I hit that wire fence, a chain link fence. Had fallen 2 kids in the back. Fortunately, he'd been a veteran in Bougainville or someplace. Said, "Oh, we made rougher landings than that over where he was." I said, "Glad he felt that way."
What year was that? Do you remember?
Late 50s, I guess.
Yeah. So, did you ever, I can't remember if you told me or not, did you ever fly to Washington, Mike Monroe to Washington and back?
No.
That was just strictly for the local.
Never, I'd go up there, take people from here and bring them back and that kind of thing, but no, I never even asked him to come to Hawaii.
Oh, he flew commercial?
Had weather and had everything else, every trip that went up there, so I could handle it, but I didn't want to be bothered again.
Well, I could probably go on for days. We could sit and talk aviation, but I think we're running out of tape.
I'm glad to talk to you, but I know that to be so knowledgeable about it, you have some idea what I'm talking about. It makes it much easier.
Oh, sure.
Your knowledge of it and knowing what you want anyway, and I hope we'll be able to impart some of it to you. I want you to look at that stuff on the wall.
I sure will. I sure will.
That big trophy there that the side was given to me. Yeah, I worked in the aerospace education program for a long time. We had our workshop at OSU in the summer, and I 3 weeks up there, and then we would go on.
Let's see what you term barnstorming.
I ran the origin of the. You want to know what the origin of the term barnstorming was, or where it came from? I ran across that term in an election before flying, so I think that's where it came from. One of the presidential election, I think, early 1900s, and I think that's where it came from.
Applied to, and this going across the country, just stopping here and there before flying, and just to sort of go and stop, talk to people there, and move on to the next place, which is, I guess, what the term came from. I never did know where it came from, but I mean, that's the only way I can figure it. After flying came along, well, that's what it meant there. You just go from town to town, pick up a dollar here and there, talking to people.
much tape do we have? We got a few minutes?
About 15 minutes.
Oh, okay. Roy Turner. Did you know Roy Turner?
Sure.
Okay, he was interested in aviation. What was his connection to
Well,
aviation?
Harper Turner Oil Company. They had a Twin Beach, and that was Roy's interest in it. And guy called Captain Pitts was a pilot, I remember. But Forrest Harper and Roy, that was his only interest. Bill, his son's a pilot. Bill was a pilot.
Well, you know, I keep picking up that he had an interest in aviation, and that, you know, he's the one, it was under his administration that the Aeronautics Commission came about, was it not?
Of course, Roy, in 1940, let's see, 1950, Mike ran for Senate. He didn't like, of course, we had Preacher and two of the others voted against him. And anyway, Roy, of course, this is an airplane, let us use the airplane something. Pitts was his pilot. Coach McNeil worked for Harper Turner then. Waiting to see him borrow the airplane. Yeah, that was Roy's only direct interest in it, I part of that.
Do you happen to know offhand who was the first governor to really use an airplane to campaign or travel around as governor? I've been trying to track that down.
First governor was probably the first one that I could think about was Raymond Gary. Offhand.
That'd be about 1952 or so.
Well, I'll tell you, Johnson Murray, you ran a big Democratic rally, barbecue, and I had Mike and Carl Albert or somebody, or Tom Steve, one of the other quiet or something, kind of barbecue thing around. They went and stopped at Durant for this barbecue. And we were parked right next to this guy who was flying Johnson Murray and Willie. They were flying Staggerway Beach. And we came out, and I got Carl and Mike in the airplane, and I got in, and this guy was trying to start this Staggerway. Johnson Murray, his time ran out, and he just took his hamburgers and barbecue and put it in a sack, and he was sitting in the back of the airplane eating his hamburgers. And I stuck my head out the window and told this Harold McKellar who was flying, I said, "You set the damn thing on fire, you better get the governor out there." And so he got out there. Johnson Murray didn't know what was the matter with him. I said, "Damn it, tell him the thing's on fire, baby, you get out." And we sat there in the center, Carl and Tom Steve, one of the others. But that's who it was, Johnson Murray. I don't forget. He finally crawled out. He choked the thing or something too much. That scoop in the bottom caught fire. Johnson was sitting there eating his barbecue, he was not worried about it.
This is when he was governor, yeah. Staggerwing Beach. Well, so the governors were flying. I'd like to find the first governor that flew. I'd like to find
Well,
that.
that's first one of I think of. Now, of course, back when Mike was in the house, we didn't. Bob Pearl used his airplane, but of course that was later. And, I don't think we had a governor except campaign with Johnson Murray. And I know Johnson Murray and also Raymond Gary used the airplane. I don't think anyone before that. Well, the Murrays didn't. I mean, Willie. Bill Murray, he wouldn't get close to the airplane.
Yeah, I don't imagine he would he? I understand Edward Gaylord wasn't much on airplanes. Walter Harrison wrote in his book about what was it? A beach. They fixed it up with a mobile photographic lab and everything else for the Oklahoman, anyway, Gaylord wouldn't have anything to do with it, so
And then at that time, Eddie hasn't beat Jet now. He has a house up at the Grand Lake condo out there.
no, this is Edward Gaylord, the
Yeah,
father.
Edward, yeah. Oh, the old man, never, I don't think he ever got in there.
Yeah.
Like the old man.
Yeah, they tried to convince him to buy one, and he wouldn't.
Ed has a jet now.
One more question. You mentioned the Capitol Airport.
Well,
The Capitol Airport.
Yeah.
Where was that at?
would be about 3 blocks just straight south of the mansion.
Okay.
21st
Okay.
and it's 21st, just beyond the streetcar tracks. The streetcar ran out there, just on the east side of the streetcar tracks. And as a matter of fact, the runway ran right along parallel to the streetcar tracks.
Roughly behind where the Historical Society building is.
Yeah, just about, well, almost behind the historical building, just east of it, yeah.
Were there any hangars out there?
Huh?
Were there ever any?
No,
No hangars?
tied it down.
Red Mosier. I listened to a tape of Red Mosier.
Red never was out there. He was on that south field
Yeah.
and now on 29th Street.
Well, he was talking that as a, not as a kid because he was in World War I. He talks about during World War I, pilots would fly up from Fort Sill and land there, and the ladies would come out with their mothers in the cars and pick them up and take them to soirees downtown, and so it was in use as early as that. And I was wondered who operated it. Was that Bob Tarbutton that operated it, or was it just a field where people landed?
Well, no, out there, I think it's one of the Capitol field. Morrow brothers had it. The 2 brothers, Pat, I think they both killed themselves out on 23rd Street one Thanksgiving morning. They were out there flying around, and I don't know whether it sputtered in or what, but they went in and they had an old McFarland car. The guys had been hauling gasoline out there in it, and they were spinning smoke and set it on fire and burned the body off of it. So after the brothers got killed, I bought it from his wife, Pat's wife. Took it over to the military department, rebuilt the body for it. It stayed with the military when I left, so it's still at it.
Well, that's about it. Well, I guess we can keep talking forever.
Well, I mean, I want to get whatever I can for you.
Can you think of anything else?
Not really.
Bill Bleakley.
He and Clint Johnson were early days. Clint was the sheriff, worked at the sheriff's office. He flew, and Bill Bleakley was the Clarence Page's reserve unit.
Well, Bleakley and Dorothy Pressler tried to set a record, an altitude record in what was it, a Curtis, I think it was 1933. They tried to set an altitude record here in Oklahoma City.
Yeah, I remember that. What was it?
And what was it? They never could confirm it because the ink in the barograph froze or something like that.
I remember down at the old South Shields Field, a couple of lieutenants before Sill were up here. They show up on the weekends, land down in DC-4, and they decided to go for record, and they took that DC-4 in open cockpit, 24,000 feet, and they had on, of course, sheepskin flying suits and all this stuff. It didn't have a paragraph. You couldn't. They claimed they were 24. We had to take the word for it. Damn near froze to death. I guess they were way up high, but no one ever heard of going that high at that time.
Where would you, if you were a pilot in Oklahoma City, say in the 20s, who would you have do your engine work for you? Do you have anybody that overhauled?
Oh,
I'm talking about your mechanics.
Lola
and,
Sheffield, of course, was a mechanic, and he did the rigging for these people. Harry Hodgins, who became an FAA inspector later years, who when his Walter needed, he had another airplane. He put it together, but it wasn't rigged properly. They were always trying to spin it. He brought it over to us. And, she financed him 2 or 3 airplanes. So that were early days. No, she was his girlfriend. He never would say so, but she had money anyway.
Do you know Choice Holden?
Who?
Choice Holden? He was from Hugo, one arm
Oh yeah,
pilot.
yeah, I know.
He was with the, he was an attorney, a judge.
Yeah, oh yeah, I knew Bill, yeah.
Yeah. What kind of pilot was he?
Well, I don't know. He flew, that's all I know.
You know, he was a balloonist in his early
Yeah.
days, one-arm balloonist. And
Yeah, I remember.
he's a fascinating character to me because,
Oh, Holden, you know, who was manager of municipal one time, who was one arm guy.
oh really?
Yeah, he had one arm.
George Brower.
Choice Holden.
Did you know George Brower?
Huh?
George Brower. George Brower.
Browler, yeah. He's still around, I think.
No, he.
He died?
Yeah, just recently. He was a mechanic for Wiley Post.
Oh.
He's a mechanic for Wiley Post for a while.
Yeah, but I mean, he's dead now.
Yeah.
I remember that name, that's true.
Clyde Knuckles.
Huh?
Clyde Knuckles.
Oh, Clyde,
What was his background?
well, he just a country boy, learned to fly, and he had started Knuckles Airport, and ran it for a long time. And then he went to New Mexico and had an operation out there for a long time. And when he left, went to Lloyd Catlin over Knuckles when Clyde went to New Mexico.
Where does Lloyd Catlin come into the picture in Oklahoma? I heard he was from down from Altus or something like that.
Yeah, no, he's from Kansas originally, but he was a repairman or a troubleshooter for International Harvester Company. That's how he got flying. He'd land the field work on tractors and combines or whatever they had those years. They didn't have combines, they had trash machines and tractors, and he was a super. That's how he had an old 50-horse Cub. He landed alongside these farmers' fields and work on their machinery, get in his Cub, move on. That's how he got flying.
Yeah, I remember him.
The first flight in Oklahoma. First airplane flight.
What?
First airplane flight in Oklahoma.
Horseman?
Yeah, where was it? You know? The first flight in Oklahoma.
I know the first one here was 1910, Willard. That's the first one that I knew of. There might have been others, but that's the only one I knew of. That was 1910.
Well, I've had a really enjoyable time. I've enjoyed this, and I shouldn't get paid for it. I'll tell you that.
Well,
We better take that off the tape, though.
Give you some information.
Oh yes. Oh yes.
Why don't you take that FAA thing along with you?
I sure will.
And